eyebrows are starting to raise with all the sound, right? Are you guys it? Oh, sound. Yeah. Yes. Anyone else? Confused? Scared? Very uncomfortable, yes. So not every student has that level of sensory overload, but many do. So think of your classroom. Think of, you guys all teach different things. Think of teaching and the student you're talking to is hearing everything through that funnel. It gives you a different perspective on, like, you would never know that. You would never looking at a kid that they're feeling and hearing all that. We talked in the first session about like the lights in there. What were other specific things about the video that made you feel uncomfortable? Do you guys notice all the little things?
The noise.
It was louder, right?
Louder, and staticky, blocking out other things that you're trying to focus on.
Right. Yes. They're also like someone spilled something, I think. Yes, the heels clacking. The lights were blinking. And you hear the whole time I was like, calm down, which probably didn't help. Were you gonna say something else? No. Okay. And what you can't say in the video was there could have been odors from what spilled. There could have been other things that you can't even get from the video. So now I want you to think of your classroom. Take 5 minutes, talk to your seatmate, think of your classroom, whatever environment you're in, and think of what potential sensory triggers could there be there. Go ahead. Okay, let's bring it back together. Can I have some volunteers to share? What did you think of? Yes, Jason?
The lights very lights and then also that's each fourth grade, so they're small.
Right.
25 of them, and my room is quite small. So like the tight spaces and seating arrangement sort of limits what I can do.
Yeah. We talked about lighting in the first session about like fluorescent lights actually move really fast, and I think adults can sense that. So it can be very overly stimulating to something that to us we don't even notice.
We are part of the daycare.
Okay.
So we have the lights for the babies.
Right.
The other side that over time, like get overstimulated from the babies might get. And, the lights. Vice versa.
Yeah, yours is probably a lot of auditory,
Yes,
I'm guessing.
and diagnose, yeah, if they're getting to that age.
Right. And you guys are kind of the gatekeepers, you might catch more needs than the parents. It's hard. So I worked in Lampeter, I worked with a lot of kindergartners that would come in not diagnosed. This is sad because they were dysregulated, but they could maintain it until they got into a structured setting. Sad that the parents didn't know and they were getting support. So kindergarten became a big time of infections, catching students.
I know you get that same.
Visual, yes,
Yeah,
visual.
or even just like afterwards or next.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sure in elementary school, you need to use a lot, you can't go on. So,
Even in their, yeah, I know it's.
right. Good. You guys think that?
Be something if a water bottle drops on the floor, like those are so loud.
That one makes the.
Oh, right. I didn't think like that.
All day long.
It's like books, you could bubble wrap them.
Like we keep them in our locker, but then like at the end of the day, they always drop. Anyway.
And that would be a good.
Someone-
That's the first
They-
one.
And they really are loud.
Yeah.
Yes, chairs creaking. Guys have anything to share?
I'm a different environment. I'm the PE teacher. So
So
we
you
have
have-
a large environment, but tactile.
Yep,
Definitely auditory, because of the loudness of teaching,
good turn echoes.
yeah, and sensory pressure or other things. Using your muscles in certain ways. to very, very well.
Yeah, PE, some kind of kids love it, and for others, it's so overstimulating and you're a little challenging. Good. Anyone else? No? No, you-
And I didn't think like.
Oh.
But
We're quite good here.
I don't have like the room that. Here is. Empty, but that's.
Right.
But I know it's set up. The thing I was sharing with Kathy was like last spring. As needed, parent, to help. So once they're going to maybe somebody,
Right.
in a teaching experience or.
Right.
And she was real chill and laid back. And she, like, doing whatever, the kids would do whatever, and it was loud and I was like, oh, this is. And the kid always had down.
Yeah. I probably would have too.
You know, and then like, kind of like.
You guys be just okay?
Just talking about like the constant like movement, like the kids that get up and down and walk to the pencil sharpener or walk to get tissue or kids walking in the door or just, it's just a lot at times. going
School
on.
is such a busy environment. So much sensory input. It can be loud, moving around.
Especially for us in the middle school, transitioning from one to another, like kids are moving, the bell rings, and it's like you try to give them the props ahead, they think they need to go to the next one, and they're struggling to transition
Right.
physically as well as emotionally.
Yes, yes, it's more than one. Were you guys okay?
Well, I was just saying, I think I'm gonna readjust the way I set this room up because last year I had.
Oh, that's right. This is your room.
Yeah, a giant U shape, so if I wanted to, and I separated the people that were gonna talk to each other, but then they just talked further. And even if they weren't the ones that were autistic, if there were students on either side of them, they got caught up in this conversation, even if they were right next to me, so reevaluating a little bit.
So part of what I really want to focus on obviously, today can feel really overwhelming, okay? So I've had years of understanding autism and exploring it. Some of you may have experienced, some of you may be new to it. But I want to think proactively. First, understand it. Second, how can you plan and set up an environment to reduce a lot of these things efficiently? That's going to go for the next part, because there's so many strategies we could talk about. There's so many things. I've tried to condense it to be very simple and very clear. So don't panic. Don't go into overload on me yet. We're still in the feeling. I want you guys, it's okay if you feel overwhelmed right now. Your students feel that way a lot. It's okay if you're like, I don't have all the tools, because my goal was when you leave today, you will have the tools. The next thing to talk about, how many of you have heard of executive functioning? I feel like I should tell the counselor. Let me show you. All right, so what is executive functioning?
Organizational strategies within your brain.
Yes.
Prioritize things.
Excellent. This is one of the main challenges with the student with autism. Executive functioning, or lack thereof. So this is executive functioning is the brain air traffic control. The runways are the working and attention they come to school with. So when a student is diagnosed with autism, or if your students have had psychoeducational diagnosis, the one thing they test is working memory. They test the speed of it and how much a student can retain. So if you have a student that comes to school with low working memory skills, or they didn't sleep good, they're worried about mom and dad, they're feeling sick, their runways are blocked. They're blocked with snow, ice. Every single thing you tell them to do is a plane. Get out your papers, hang up your backpack. Oh, quiz today. Where's your lunchbox at? Like, think of all the little things in the classroom. Each one of them is an airplane. So if you get a student that has 20 airplanes on his runway because he never gets rid of an airplane, they just keep stacking, what's going to happen to all those airplanes? They're going to collide. You're going to have like a fireball or a meltdown. So executive functioning is so important to understand and support in the classroom. And it's not just the task. Executive functioning also plays into emotional regulation and sensory, because everything starts up here. We're talking about an intellectual disability of the brain, which impacts everything the student says, does, hears, and understands.
Question, isn't this a shared commonality with ADHD? Executive function organization.
So, that's an excellent question. There's comorbid disorders that exist beside each other. However, recent research, according to my therapist, she's told me they're starting to wonder if it's one umbrella because so much of it overlaps. You also have OCD, anxiety. There's basically what they do is you get evaluated, okay? And psychologists will have different evaluations. Whatever is impacting the student's life the most is the diagnosis they'll have. So there is certain things about ADHD that are a little bit different than autism, but a lot of them really overlap. And executive functioning is extremely true of both. It's probably more noticeable. Like you would expect a kid with ADHD to have really poor executive functioning. A kid with autism does also, but you see the emotional component also because they have more emotional regulation. So it looks a little bit different. That's a great question. Dysregulation versus defiance. It's very important to understand the difference between the two. So we talked about communication difficulties, sensory processing. We didn't really touch on rigidity a lot. Rigidity is a main component of the autism diagnosis. It kind of goes along with executive functioning. They can't move to the next plane. They can't shift gears. You take that compounded, really difficult time managing emotions. So when you wake up in the morning, I wake up at a 1 or 2, almost exactly school day. Then you'll be 5. You have a cup of coffee. Okay, I'm good. On the way to school, you have a flat tire. Well, now I'm at a 10, but someone comes and fixes it. Problem solved. Back to a 2 or 3. A student with autism wakes up every day at a 6 or a 7. Any little thing, any change, any new person, any unexpected assignment, any sounds or smells that they weren't expecting to push them to a 10. Once they're at a 10, they're stuck. So you think of all the 5 things we're talking about, they all kind of work together or don't work together. So you get executive functioning, they can't prioritize their tasks. You get sensory processing, they can't sort out the smells and the sounds they're hearing. You get social communication, they can't tell you what they're feeling, they just feel stuck. And then you get difficulties regulating emotions. It's a different part of the brain that helps a student regulate emotions. So now they have all these challenges and they're just stuck. And what does a stuck student do? Usually one of 2 things, would be my guess. They either buckle down and refuse to do anything you want them to do, or they melt down, kind of like a pressure cooker. They can't contain all of the dysregulation, has to go somewhere. And then once you have a meltdown, you have a behavior. What starts the behavior is not what maintains it. You can have a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old that has these emotional challenges, and if it's not recognized and dealt with, parents might like give in or just like, I mean, I did it. Okay, here's an M&M. Can we just get to the store, please? But a student learns, I feel all these feelings. I feel dysregulated. But if I shut down and throw a fit, it goes away. Mom wanted me to clean my room, but I've learned if I melt down every time, she's not going to push through. And I'm throwing out random examples to show that what can start as dysregulation at a young age is quickly reinforced for behavior that you guys end up getting as the kids get older. So when you look at a behavior, you can't always even see what started the behavior or what the trigger was, because it could be layers of that. Every behavior tells us something. Behavior is communication. It's not a problem to fix. We have all seen and experienced behaviors. Most of you are classroom teachers. You have, what, 15, 20, 25 or more in the after school. You have all these kids, and you need to give them an education and get them your lesson plans and throughout the day. I'm sure you're asking, how can I even think about autism? And emotional regulation is too much. It's in my head. But there are simple ways to set up your classroom and interact with students that supports all students. Every student is better at emotional regulation. Statistics show like 1 in 5 kids now have like depression or mood problems. Even without the diagnosis of autism, probably every student you work with has an emotional need. So what I want to teach you today, don't think specific to 1 or 2 students. Think of, I'm going to do this as a class-wide intervention that will support everyone, and specifically the students with autism. Okay, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute kind of break. I'm going to give you scenario cards. If you need to stretch or use the bathroom, now would be the time to do it. I have 12 scenarios I'm going to pass out. I want you to read the scenario, think of the environment or the students you work with, and think of what could be the potential trigger. Remember, we talked about social communication, rigidity, emotional regulation, sensory processing. So think of everything we've talked about. I don't want you to problem solve. That's the next hour. This is only to get your brain thinking, looking at behavior differently. What is the student in this scenario trying to tell me? I think we're good. You want to find someone to talk to, unless you want to do a solo performance. So 5 to 10 minutes, do this, take a break.
I saw you guys were on, so probably. I meant as far as.
Helps me figure out that you are the teacher. I wanted to explain to
Okay.
real quick. So I'm Deb, Justin, school counselor.
Okay.
Here. Are you speaking out your All right, I have the reason I wanted to so I was told that and one of the
Good, excellent. All right, let's bring it back together. All right, take a second. Look at your pink cards. If this was a classroom setting, and I walked up to the table, I'm actually in class, we're gonna do some group work. Why do you think that would be absolutely terrifying for students?
If I'm not going to communicate effectively.
Excellent. Good. What else? Change? What else? There's so many unknowns. Excellent. What else? Group work requires working together, requires being flexible, might not have a specific end date, it's not structured. When structured correctly, group work can be phenomenal for students with autism because they can learn from their peer. When not structured correctly, it can be a disaster. And we'll talk about that later. All right, let's go through our scenario cards. Share a brief snippet from your table, what you think was the trigger, and what part was it? Social communication? Was it sensory overload? Was it emotional dysregulation? What caused the specific behavior on your pink card? Let's start with the back.
We don't all have the same.
Nope, they're all different.
This one says despite, I'm sorry, during circle time, student repeatedly leaves their spot that walks around. And that, can you be taking that?
So sensory processing. Could it be anything else?
Or that he might, he could be anxious, or he could maybe be with,
Yes. I asked could be anything else because sometimes you look at, the student has autism, you're like, oh yeah, that's sensory. But take a second look just to make sure there's not anything else also impacting. Because it definitely is sensory.
maybe he doesn't like this thing next year.
Social, yes. Or executive functioning, he's overwhelmed with tasks. Or dysregulation, he is anxious.
Or he has that, like, where is he going when he's walking? Like, is there something?
Yes, yes.
Really like the pencil marker.
Right. Excellent. Good. All right. Next table. Yes? Yeah.
Okay, students shall know and crumbles of paper, their worksheet after being asked to fix a page. They accomplished their task they were asked to. They want to move on to the next thing. Or they're anxiety feeling failure of failure. Fear of failure.
Yes. That's so huge. And it's sad. Students that are so insecure and afraid of failure, they don't tell you that. They do something destructive or interrupting. Sometimes the order, middle school and high school students, they'd much rather be known as the bad kid than the kid that doesn't know how to solve the problem. So they'd much rather act out. It's literally a coping skill. But students with autism often also think very literally. A literal brain that's programmed like a computer doesn't allow room for mistakes. They can't process a mistake. I messed up. I can't ever do it right. It's all or nothing. There's no middle ground. So, excellent. Anything else? Was that it? So part of the executive functioning.
Or we're going to go back and correct and reteach.
That's part of the disconnect. They only see like in the moment and not like what you naturally process. And everyone else is thinking, oh yeah, we're gonna go back and fix it.
I accomplished the task I asked them to do, ready to move to the next.
Good.
But to go off of your guys's, I had a student, come back, and he, I would ask him to do a task, and he wasn't diagnosed autism. And I go back and think about it, and he would do the task wrong. And I'd be like, okay, let's sit down and actually process this and do it. He would just sit there. And then he would go with this. And I would go, okay, let's take the next step. Let's work on the first problem. I would walk it off. Let's go with the first one. And then he would go and just
Wipe it on the web.
lose it.
And
And then that would escalate everything. He would go and just lose it all.
sometimes they associate a negative feeling with an object. So if I can throw the object away or pitch it, it's gone.
I can't see it
out of sight, out of mind, then it's gone. Good. Students with autism can often have OCD also. Yeah, I figured that's what you're getting at. Yeah. Which then it's like compounded because it's not perfect. Yeah. Good. All right. Let's see.
Even the master going to your back to be student knows and not so much. So they kind of overstimulated by noise.
Yep. Good. Were you thinking something else or you disagree?
That's what we all know. Yeah.
So that was your answer.
You know, again, they may not know what the expectation.
And you often find as a student is taught, they're not going to say, I don't understand, because that gives the impression they're stupid. So just rather, I just won't do it. There's a lack of communication. There's also a emotional dysregulation. It's compounded. Good. All right. Steve?
Our scenario is a student refuses to enter the art room because it's feeling small.
So what trigger do you think that is? So the immediate one is definitely sensory. Let's think deeper. What else could it be? Actually, that wasn't brought up in the first session, but that's, yes, absolutely. They had photographic memory, right? So just say they failed in the group stuff class or didn't turn out the way you wanted. Their solution is not going back there. If you have incredible sensory sensitivities and you smell a horrible smell, what else would that create in you?
Association.
Yes, association. And with that association, how would you feel? And dysregulated. So far from a paint smell, we have sensory dysregulation, emotional dysregulation, possibly social communication, if they can't tell you why it's there.
Also, if they're smelling paint, they want to come up with or having paint on them.
Right. And often it's hard to put into words. This texture bothers me. Like, what little kid is going to tell you that? Sometimes they can. Yeah. All right. Is that me? Oh, that's good. I was like, I don't have my friend turned off. All right. What do you think?
Ours says, during a math test, the student repeatedly asks for reassurance and erases their answers over and over. So we felt like, first of all, they're tense, first of all.
Yes.
It can be very overwhelming to the kids, let alone the action of doing the math. But there's also kind of an element in there of nerves or a want for perfection and erasing and asking for reassurance.
Yes. Yeah. Emotional regulation could be executive functioning. Good.
We had a student suddenly throws their pencil across the room and hides under a desk after being asked to line up. We were saying that maybe, so there was something that triggered it. So maybe this child was like really invested in what they were doing and they weren't ready to move on to something else, or
Maybe if another student, did something to them, that triggered the pencil throwing. Maybe it had nothing to do with the teacher, but somebody else triggered that behavior and threw the pencil out of frustration. So.
What I found very challenging for your three kids and also in my classroom is the delay in processing. So kid would have a meltdown, and I think, okay, I'm looking at the situation, I really can't figure anything out. And then I process with them, it's something happened 15 minutes ago, or a week ago, or even like a month ago. That rigidity and that photographic memory doesn't allow them to move on. So that was an excellent point. Sometimes it's like, who knows what the initial trigger was, but memory starting the day at 6 or 7, everything stacks. You never get to clear the runway unless you specifically taught them how to do it. They can stop. All right. So everyone, you didn't share, sorry, and you didn't either.
So ours says during a loud assembly, a student covers their ears, starts humming loudly, and dismissed. So we talked about, obviously, the first keyword being loud, sensory with, struggles with noise, loud noises. But then after we talked about that, I thought more, it could also be a lighting sensory as well. Is it a dark auditorium? Is it a bright gym? It could also be the child position in the seat. Are they on the end? Are they scrunched in between people? Are they in the middle of the aisle?
Yep.
Or, and then also at the end where they would use to move when dismissed. Transitions.
Excellent. There's a lot that happened there. Yes.
This personal space, like having to line up with people close in proximity, others sense of that social and personal.
Yes, definitely. Well, it's kind of overlap probably in the social emotional mind, the dysregulation.
Yeah.
When I taught elementary school, I would do a hula hoop lesson. Well, I would actually teach kids to stay in the hula hoop. But sometimes you do that too.
Yes. We learn about personal space and
Yes.
a safe space.
But sometimes the opposite is true. They don't have a clue what that is or it really bothers them. Good. Excellent. Do you have one back there?
We did. A student is coming loudly and rocking in their seat during it. I thought that'd be the executive functioning, like not knowing where to begin, like just being overwhelmed with all the things that they could do.
Excellent. So you didn't start with sensory. Either answer is correct. It looks sensory because they're stimming. So a stim is something you can do to get input. Could be verbal stimming, could be repetitively, but like a big like function that works. Or it could be emotion dysregulation. And sometimes you don't know. So the great thing is, ground your thinking, you can think differently. And you're not looking at this as something the student did, you're thinking, what do they need? A different way to look at behavior.
Our card said that while transitioning from lunch to class, a student clutches his backpack and refuses to let go. So we were theorizing that the student may have been overstimulated in a cafeteria setting. They simply kind of shut it down. Alternatively, perhaps the student was just very anxious about moving through the hallways, feeling insecure, clutching that backpack for a little bit of security.
Excellent. Yes. So here's the challenge. Students with autism take everything very literal. So my son, he had a teddy bear. Girls could not touch that teddy bear. It was his teddy bear. There's like a direct ownership. They don't understand other people's worlds. Like their bubble is their bubble, and that is their bubble. They can't see outside of it. So anything from home, especially, is like there's a lot of ownership because it's something they can control, something familiar that helps them feel calm in a very noisy environment. So good catch on that. Good way to look at it. You're solo.
At recess, a student plays alone and becomes upset when peers try to join him. So the first thing I thought of was sensory overload. There was just too much going on. There's the kids playing basketball and the ball bouncing, getting off the rim. There's kids screaming. There's kids running around. Just too much for them to process. Emotional regulation. Maybe they went out to recess having an expectation they were going to play with this group of friends, and they didn't invite him or her to join. So then he or she just shut down.
Yeah.
And then executive function, kind of like too much activity, but not being able to choose, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to play football? Do I want to do this? And just rather than choosing, they just turn it.
Excellent.
Also, the social aspect, they don't have asked to join in, participate, or they might have played with that group and the changing of rules, the rigid structure.
Heaven forbid there's two sets of rules for Foursquare, right? Yeah. Excellent. You guys are so perceptive. So my daughter Ruth was in first grade. And at that time, we thought she had attention deficit disorder, but that was all we thought. And she came home from school every day. Mommy, the kids at recess are so mean. They keep running away from me. And of course, as a mom, well, remember, I'm overwhelmed and exhausted. And they're my babies. I was very protective of them, as any parent would be. But I'm like, well, that's not right. They need to be friends with you. So I asked the classroom teacher, she's like, oh, well, I haven't heard anything. So I talked to the guidance counselor. I was like, will you please go out and observe recess? I think my daughter's being bullied or like people running away from her, which rejection, I can tell you as a mom of 3 neurodivergent kids, they haven't been, quote, rejected that much, but they also haven't been accepted that much as far as like having close friendships. So the guidance counselor went out to recess and she told me what was happening. Ruth would go out and she would see a group of kids playing tag running past her. So in her mind, they were running away from her. She didn't know how to join that game of tag. Ruth just graduated. She'll be 18 on Saturday, next Saturday. And she still doesn't know how to. She took a friend, no, she's 17 and driving, fully capable. She took a friend to Hershey Park for the day. Do you think she had one conversation? She came back and was talking to her therapist, and because we thought Ruth had made more progress, because on the surface, she's masking, she's happy, she's driving, she graduated. And then her therapist, our psychologist, Dr. Butters is amazing. She's like, oh, Ruth, I was in Hershey Park. She's like, oh, well, my friend, we didn't talk at all. She's like, you didn't talk? Why not? Well, there's nothing to talk about. Ruth didn't know how to make small talk. She didn't know how to show interest. They were doing a shared activity parallel, not interacting. So now lost my train of thought. Where were we at? We were talking about recess, right? Yeah, so recess and lunch are two of the hardest parts of day because they're not structured. You have social expectations, possible overstimulation, emotional dysregulation. But yeah, Ruth's perception of recess, I don't think she ever believed me. She would always come home and tell me the kids were running away from her. And I couldn't, and I'm an autism support teacher. Of course, I couldn't be there with them in the classroom, but I couldn't teach them in that moment how to like join. It's so hard to join. Stephen, my 19-year-old, 6 years, he's only had 2 friends. He has a job, he goes to church, but he hasn't learned how to interact with other people. Guess what those 2 friends are doing? They're dating my daughters. So now, Stephen feels like he has lost 2 friends. Because they can't be a boyfriend and a friend at the same time. One of the last days of school, it was lunchtime. Stephen he's 19 now, he was 18. His IQ is like 132. He's brilliant. Remember, he built a computer in 1 day. None of the teachers believe me when I tell them how much he struggles with executive functioning because he has a photographic memory. He can't memorize complete tests. So it's the last day of school, or the last week of school. And he's sitting in the lunchroom and he starts crying. 18-year-old boy is crying because he felt like he didn't have any friends. He said, people laugh at me. I'm not accepted. And of course, remember that mama bear? I was like in there the next day talking to the teacher. And I was like, what's up? And she's like, we love Stephen. He cracks jokes every day. We laugh with him. He's the highlight of our day. But Stephen's perspective was they were laughing at him and he didn't have a place. And having Jake and Devin date his sisters, he felt like he lost even that connection. And he would go to the therapist, Dr. Butters, he'd be like, I'm so lonely. I don't have any point in living. I don't have friends. And so every time he'd go and she'd tell me this, of course I'm concerned. I go to school, I go to church, I talk to Jake, I talk to Devin. I'm like, can someone please show Stephen interest? And he said, Mrs. B, we are. We spend tons of time with him. We invite him to join us. It didn't matter. Because in his brain, and this is all in the last 3 or 4 months. This isn't like a long time ago, this is recent. In his brain, they had a girlfriend, he wasn't important. And he couldn't, there was no value to him that they were asking him questions. They're saying, Stephen, come and join us. He was so stuck on, I don't have any friends. So even when you understand all this, and here I am giving this training, my kids are still hard for me to understand. And we have days when, well, we're not all in tears, not at the same time, but there's a lot of tears because we live in a society that doesn't always understand neurodivergent. And sometimes even when you do understand it, you can't read their brain. Stephen came home from school every day smiling. We're sending him to a private Christian school in Hershey. I thought I had him in a safe environment. The teachers are giving me rave reviews. I had no idea until like the end of the year when the tears happened that for months he had been feeling rejected and lonely. So it's just another example of sometimes the huge disconnect between what we experience and what is really in their brain. Okay, we were doing the pink cards, right? Did we finish on them? I missed you. Sorry.
A student runs out of the classroom and provides fire drill. And we talked about, well, there's a lot of factors, and then it's a surprise fire drill.
Right.
So the student might want to have that schedule, and just to go in, see regular classes having that, and then having surprise fire drill. A lot of applications, kind of freaking out, there's loud noises, the fire is extremely loud, flashing lights. Trying to get order, to get kids to go outside.
Yeah, some might have paper clips, because I ran out of orders. Only take out the packet that has this on top. It says behavior as indication. So I did give you a slide sheet. I did give you a bunch of papers. I tried to give you guides that you can refer to for quick summaries. This is behaviors as communication. There's 3 questions at the bottom you can ask yourself when you see a behavior. What is a student trying to tell me? Respond to the need, not just the behavior. And small shifts in environment or support can prevent escalation. So this is just kind of a summary of what we've been talking about, is a resource for you to refer to. Next page, underneath that, should say connection and communication. You need this paper and a pen. Everyone good? Does everyone have connection and communication? Yeah, go ahead. All right, now we're going to move into the tools part. We spent a lot of time on understanding autism and recognizing what triggers are. That's huge. Yes, I'm going to give you tools, but if you have an understanding how to look at behavior differently, sometimes that is all that is needed. All right, connection and communication. Number 1. Listen. Give your full attention without interrupting. This seems so simple, but giving the student a space to be heard, often behaviors happen because the student probably isn't communicating great, or they have anxiety and they can't wait, think they're not going to be heard. It's so important to listen to a student and give your full attention. Let them be heard. They speak differently, but whatever they're communicating to you, you can often, some of the time, prevent a behavior by just giving them space. Some behavior is attention seeking or a way to be heard. So, listening proactively. Number 2, validate feelings. As teachers, we're often so afraid of behavior, of labeling what it is. Like, are you angry? Live in that moment with them. Often there's a disconnect between what they're feeling and what it is. They don't know. To you, it seems simple, right? Frustrated, I'm sad, I'm angry. To them, it's one negative feeling. So validating what they're feeling. Don't try to fix it. Don't go up to a student melting down and say, you shouldn't be doing that. Because that makes them feel shame and like they're a problem to be fixed, not a behavior to be understood. Give time to process. Like I said earlier, their brain works a little bit slower, especially with all the airplanes on the runway. Sometimes they need extra time to get the okay to take off. It doesn't mean they're ignoring you or being defiant if they do nothing when you say take out a paper. So always wait at least 3 to 5 seconds before you give them another prompt. When you give them another prompt, that becomes another airplane on the runway. It doesn't help get the first airplane off. It just adds to it. Waiting is crucial. And if you feel like you need more support, you can tap on it or give them more support to get the plane off the runway. But don't give a second prompt. 4, calm voice. So often we don't realize it. Our voice tone changes. So my daughter Hannah, she's 16, starting her senior year tomorrow. Over the years, I've really struggled with her. And of course, I'm stressed, I'm exhausted. And so sometimes my voice can be more intense. I have a very dynamic personality, so sometimes I say things very loudly. And the pattern was always, I'd say something, she'd burst into tears. Mommy, why are you angry at me? And I was like, first of all, I felt horrible. She was like crying. Secondly, I was puzzled. I'm not angry at you. We didn't know until last October, 2 years ago, sorry, that she had autism and that she was not processing my emotions. The tone of your voice and how you say something is so impactful. You can say, hey, can you move your chair? Hey, can you move your chair? Everything is different. But a student with autism is incredibly sensitive to the tone of your voice. So when you communicate with them, especially when they're dysregulated, talk very calmly. Don't respond to arguments. Distract. Distraction is key. They're stuck. If you join the argument and try to convince them they're wrong, guess what? Yes, you're stuck too. Then you have two rigid people, and it's a power play. Who's going to win? The goal isn't that you're right or they're right. Okay, I know I'm right. I'm a teacher. I don't need them to agree with me. I just need them to finish the task. So, like, I had a student that's stuck, not doing anything. I had a student walking the piano 3 weeks ago. I don't want to be here. And I had prepared for him. I was like, he loves music. It's going to be great. I don't want to be here. This is stupid. How long is this anyway? Can it go any faster? And I was like, what? What's going on? And he was completely stuck. So I was like, hey, could you help me move these pieces of paper? Oh, sure, Mrs. B. And he forgot that his railroad track was stuck. We switched tracks, and then I was like, oh, come back over here and play a song for me. Ended the lesson smiling and laughing, and it was no great behavior strategy. It's just his brain was locked in and stuck, and he couldn't switch the tracks. Stuck. So when you're engaged, when it becomes an argument, do not enter into it with them. You'll never win, at least not without some trauma or injury. And it distracts from the goal, which is their point. If they can keep you engaged in a dialogue, and this is true for all students, what is true? They're not doing what you want them to do. So stick with the task at hand, distract if needed, and always come back to this is what we're doing. All right, next page. This is one of the easiest strategies. This is a blue half sheet for most of you. Some of you have a photocopy. It's white. Actually, I think I might have to email this. Some of you should have this. It's just a little reminder, visual card. Body doubling. Body doubling is two people working the same space or on the same task, either or. It helps a student that feels overwhelmed to have someone sitting beside it. It's not that they can't do the task, it's that they need mental support to start. Again, think of that airplane. They don't have enough fuel on their airplane, and they feel afraid to start it by themselves. What works phenomenally is if you're in a classroom setting, you can take another student that's insecure or bored or not engaged and say, hey, can you sit with my friend and help them out? It boosts their confidence, and it's a win-win because students with autism, they want to complete tasks. They want to be accepted. They want to do the work. They don't know the steps to get there. So body doubling is a simple, effective tool that works all the time. Don't body double with the wrong person. Don't pick your behavior person and say, hey, can you sit with my friend? Obviously, that would be a disaster. But when paired with the right student, body doubling is great. The next sheet is purple. Executive functioning quick reference. Some of you may have a white copy. Bob, do you mind reading? I'm losing my voice. Do you mind reading?
Let's go down it.
Yeah, you don't mind.
So start strong. Post, announce agenda and time. Preview what's coming and use a visual schedule and checklist. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Keep it clear. Break the task into small steps. Give transition warnings. Keep a written step list visible. Support memory. Pair verbal with visual written. Repeat and check for understanding and use consistent routines. And then to prevent overload, limit desk materials, reduce noise and visual clutter, give extra processing time.
Thank you. So you'll notice there's an overlap in like some things that support executive functioning, support emotional regulation. Because all of it is keeping things simple and predictable and clear. I'm just trying to give you different resources to think of it differently. This will be helpful, like when lesson planning, setting up your classroom. To sit and go through this list and think of everything. Not as helpful like you're in a moment and you're dealing with something. This is more like for some things to make you think of how you're setting up your environment. Next, you should all have a copy of this. First thing, this is an incredible tool. I gave you all a white copy. I'm going to email Sister Eileen a copy of all these handouts. If you laminate this and keep dry erase markers in your room, you get a student stuck because of executive functioning or emotional dysregulation. This is huge in helping them process. The more you can use visuals with your students and not talk, the less chance you have meltdown. So like first math. Now you can either be at first math, then whatever they want, give you a reward, or it can help them break it down like first you're gonna do math, then you're gonna do reading. There are some things on Teacher Pay Teachers that have three steps. But first then is a tremendous way to organize their thinking, reduce anxiety, and increase predictability. So it's great for emotional regulation and executive functioning. All of you should have a dry erase board. That's my gift to you, the dry erase board and the markers. To keep, this is like your best tool. It's so easy. You can make anything in the classroom visual. Student melting down, here, write your feelings. Doesn't interrupt your teaching. They won't start a task. Here's 3 steps to get started. Lay it down and walk away. This is huge because you think of all the interactions in your day. This tool can be used to make them visual. Then it's not about the task, it's not about you as a person. It's about what you want. As teachers, your goal is students learn, right? You want them participating with you. You want them to complete every day you have an objective. So we have to kind of filter out their complaints, their anxiety. This is our goal. And when all they see is the goal, they can't argue with it. When Hannah was having her worst struggles and screaming and kicking, I would use visuals. It's right here. It's not me. Sorry. It's the rule. I can't help it. The rule is recess ends in 3 minutes. That takes out the emotional part. Otherwise, guess who gets the brunt of their frustration and behaviors? You as a teacher. Which leaves you feeling exhausted and frustrated. And it's often not effective. So translate your expectations to, sorry, it's here. It's the rule.
For that visual and social emotional regulation, can you use like a color?
The zones of regulation.
Zones of regulation, just on their desk, make it have more icon, where they can put it themselves and visualize where they are. You're coming around and you can see it without them.
Yes, so that's excellent. So 2 things. I do use the zones of regulation. With older kids, that's not socially appropriate, like they don't want anything that's different. So with older kids, it probably won't work. If a student has consistent emotional challenges and they've been taught the zones, they might see that as a tool. This could work if you don't have that, or if the student hasn't been taught, or it's like a random thing. I try to think of strategies that don't make a student stick out.
Right.
And it normalizes sharing feelings and using tools and making things visual.
Well, I was just making people on their desk, and then they could, if they're getting frustrated, just simply put like an eraser in that, so you can
Yeah.
do that. Like I use thumbs up, thumbs down, side, like a red
Right.
light, or just even student understanding of the task at work, or self-evaluation at the end of class. What we're doing.
Excellent. Think of this as a tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, that's what.
So you have already several tools. There is
I
no,
don't do the social. I don't do the social.
right.
Emotional regulation. My wife's a school person. I do know.
I was gonna say, you're speaking from some kind of experience. Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to give you tools that are simple, effective, that just add to whatever you're doing. Yeah. Obviously, visual schedules, younger grades would have visual schedules. But like for my middle school and high school, my personal kids, I printed out their schedule and put it on the back of the binder, so you can always see it wherever they go throughout the day. There's different ways to make it more applicable for older students, because as a student gets past 11 or 12, maybe even younger, they don't want to stick out or look like they need anything that their friends don't. Okay. In your packet is a sensory strategy. Did you find it? Everyone should have, oh, sorry, not in your packet, in your envelope. Everyone find it? You don't have it? You see how to- Does anyone not have a mint? Do you have some? So, how did this be a sensory tool? Why do you think this is a great sensory tool?
And it takes the focus on something else. And it gives them a minute to pause.
Yes. Also provides oral stimulation, which like pretzels, candy, cookie, not always appropriate, and mint is easier. Gum is a huge, what's the word, potential for disaster in the classroom. Used to always be a kid with ADHD, get them numb to focus, which can work. Sometimes schools have a policy against gum chewing, and sometimes often kids play with it. So I prefer mints over gum. Any other input?
I use them, based on the word I read. Research has, because it kind of starts.
Great.
Or like just occasionally one task. Like, without saying it.
Mint, yes, I don't know how much a candy mint does, but yeah, mint,
The smell.
the smell, yeah. So it's a great strategy. You can give to everyone, not just your student with autism. We talked about environment some. Studying environment, movement and positioning. Sometimes there is need for more sensory input, so it's helpful to give a job. Like, carry this heavy dictionary to the office for me. Believe it or not, like that calms their whole nervous system. And students with autism, often we see them as defiant and making our day harder. They want to be accepted. They want to be successful. They can't communicate how to get there. So getting a student with autism a job when they're feeling dysregulated or upset can actually be a great reset.
Positioning, like, I might work better laying down, just not as an autistic student, but as
Everybody, yeah.
the standing desks,
The balls,
the walls,
which, yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yeah, again, it's not always good for the whole class to be on walls, but yeah. Calming tools, I talked about this in the first session. Why do you think I don't recommend fidgets? Have you guys had success with fidgets? Like balls, squishy things? You're nodding, you have?
I've always wanted like kids that knew how to use them and did not make them noise. But they, like when they would talk, you would see them like talking to you with their everything. And then some kids would use it as toys that had to differentiate who was allowed to have it. And then they knew that kids like they had
Yes.
to understand.
The band is being best.
Yes, that's used a lot. It's for younger kids. So fidgets, I feel like, or a toy you think of, oh, it's just a fidget, but often they're used as a toy and become more distracting. So I suggest that especially with the elementary kids to try this or other things. And if they need sensory input and they can be taught how to use it, you can do one of two things. Ms. Vaughn can keep sensory stuff in her room, or you can have a sensory area in the back that everyone can have access to, but make it timed. You get 2 minutes, you get 3 minutes. Sometimes I do a visual schedule. So it's away from your classroom teaching, not distracted, but still giving them the input they need. Task-based reset. A significant tool to use, believe it or not, is a math worksheet. Why would a math worksheet be calming? Any ideas?
Logical.
Yes, logical. Anyone else?
Clearly, very solving this problem is very direct.
Yes.
Something like,
Also builds confidence. If you go something at a little bit easier level than they're at, builds that confidence and success. Behavioral momentum. If I want a student to do something and they're shut down or refusing because they're overwhelmed or emotionally dysregulated, if I put this on the desk and walk away, I'm out of the equation. I have never seen a student that like they want to finish it. It's there, you can finish, especially like number sharks and their age. It resets their brain, gets them out of the locks they're in. All right. Quickly, these you might not all have. I have 3 papers. Looks like this. These are quick guides available. Everything we've talked about so far is supporting regulation. When you have a student dysregulated, these are easy ways to help them get back on track. I need help. You can have these laminated, have little things you can slip on their desk that they can use. This is a reminder of how you can support a student that's dysregulated. And feeling charts similar to the zones, just another way, especially for younger kids. I mean, you won't get a high school student probably figuring this out, but to allow them to stop their dysregulation and their behavior and focus in on, you need to know what it is so you can help them. This is a tool to help stop that. All right, quickly, let's go back to our pink cards. Look at all the tools I gave you so far. Let's process what tool would be most effective for the student on your pink card. Let's take about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back. Who wants to tell me what strategies you come up with? Good.
So our scenario was a student who was clutching a backpack.
Yes,
and ready
yes.
to run out of the class after lunch. So we thought that perhaps a task-based reset would be appropriate. For example, we could ask the students to perhaps stay in the lunchroom for an extra minute to help push the chairs, or to make sure that there are no unclaimed cafeteria trays.
Yeah,
But that'll give them an excuse to talk about the hallway and.
that's great.
save time.
Good job. What's your solution, Bob?
So for the recess issue, I looked at the connection and communication, like go right to the student and say, kind of, what's going on, or, and truly listen and try and figure out what's going on. And maybe then try and assist him or her to integrate with some playgroup.
Good. Excellent. Can you ask me that question so I can share? That was a really good question, because that's, in the perfect world, all this works, but what do you do when it doesn't work? So,
My question was, what if the child does not want to get up and leave the room with the rest of the class, whether it's lunch or a special or something you need to read? And the child just decides to stay there in the classroom. I mean, what do you do? You know, that was my question.
and I'm giving you all these strategies in the perfect world, they work, but they don't, because kids are kids, humans are humans. We're not robots. We're not a computer that you can just push a button and it works. So it's really good to process solutions. The one thing I said, I'll say this categorically, if you have a student with a diagnosis and you have consistent behaviors and problems, I recommend a team meeting to have a safety plan put in place. I don't know how far you go with this level, with private, there might be students, you can say, it's not working for you to be here. But some of the students I worked with, we had a safety plan in place. So that was the first thing I said. Secondly, I'd always try one thing. It's kind of a bluff, but you can keep a straight face, the students know it. I understand you don't want to come with us. You don't have to, but you can't stay here. You can choose the office or the nurse. What do you choose? Which gives them control. And if their activity was overwhelming, gives them an out. But you can't ever leave a student alone. So I have to kind of get creative with that. What was your pink card? Was that wasn't the card, was it?
No, well, yeah, the child, so the teacher said, line up, the child throws a pencil, hides underneath the desk.
Oh, so that was your card. Okay.
So we were just wondering, what if you wouldn't leave the classroom, when you gotta go, for the sake of the other children, so.
Sometimes if you can tell with anxiety, you could do the dry erase board or first then. But if they're really dysregulated, I would give them, we could drop you off to the nurse on the way or use the common. Yes. Yeah, sorry, I'm defaulting to the nurse. Right. Sorry, call the counselor. Not every school has a counselor. All right.
We had to anxious about that. We thought there were actually a number of things on
sound around them, the mids, digits, we do the same thing in kindergarten, they used to. Like there's a whole number of things on here that keeping it accessible. Oh, alternative C, I found true music. If I look up when they're already standing, they probably need to. So
Right.
that's another thing that's an easy thing that's accessible for them. Understand. Or maybe, one of those things around the test, or that's
Right.
to block out things. There's a whole number of things.
Good, good.
Question for testing, mental stamina or just regular reading. We always tend to put the harder stuff for the back of the test. So the front of the test, or we reverse the test with the short answer, essays at the beginning, and then when we have less.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, or,
So it's the true runaway is the memory and attention.
right,
You're designing a test to match where they might be at that point. Good.
I always teach them the harder stuff at the end, you're more mentally drained, but if you find the answer for that harder question, you can always go back and rewrite it, it's always a strategy. My older brother taught me is, the harder stuff's at the back of the test.
Right.
So start back where you need fresh energy, and stuff like that.
Good. All right.
So we have the surprise fire drill. We kind of talked about obviously the situations. There's days when others days when.
Right.
Surprise fire drill. Kind of talk about just some sort of way to prevent us to be down. And then just kind of reassure them that, you know.
Good.
But it's important that we're all safe. Stand or where they want to be next to. It's time to go back in.
Yes. Giving the jobs, task-based reset. Yep.
Having a reminder, like, oh, if we're gonna have a fire drill, let's do it. Next time, I remind them to do it. Or go to somewhere in the counselors.
Good. Yeah.
In the gym, I practice with drum legs in real situation. So I'll teach them just sitting in their squad. All right, this is where we're gonna line up, and I have an air horn that goes through my speakers, and we go do it that way. And then, all right, we're gonna be playing in the gym, and then I do that air horn app. And I'll warn them a couple times, hey, I'm about to do this. Practicing with the real sensory thing instead of being a surprise. They now know growing up, custom in this setting, this is what we do with the stimulation.
That's great. The fire drill is really, really loud and overwhelming, but the kind of nice thing is it is something you can plan a role play for because you know it's going to happen at least a couple times.
Something that I learned in the state is that supports courses. Something we learned was if one of your autistic students is one that likes to be a helper, a lot of the time that they always have something to do to regulate. Giving them that task and that idea of you're going to lead everyone to safety, place their, when you do your seating chart, have them sit near or around the door if possible.
Yes.
So then they can be the first one to get everybody to line up and then lead everybody to where they need to go.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. All right. We have a couple more. Yeah.
I just was gonna say, I taught preschool in the past, in addition to music, and when I taught reason course, I had a little booklet I wrote on teachers and teachers, which was basically a social story,
Yes.
but it was big, it was like a full sheet of paper for each sentence, and it had pictures with it that I laminated and bound, and then it said things like, it's not always a real thing, it's not always really a fire.
To help them
It's
process
gonna
it.
be loud, yeah, and so we would read that, and then I would read it out for them to look at it, whatever, but even and with the older kids, if they needed something, you know, there's easier ways to make a social story
Right.
that they can read and discuss when it's not an emergency.
Yes. Great. Process like when they're emotionally regulated. That's why they didn't say, never give a demand or have a conversation with the student when they're dysregulated. It's futile and often just adds to their load. All right, who didn't go in the back? You ladies share?
Ours was a student is coming loudly and rocking in their seat. And I thought that parallel sitting in the focus.
Body double. Good. All right, who didn't? Okay,
We had the student crumple up the paper throw because I got something wrong. Having the executive step by step, we're gonna do it, review it, recorrect. Or instead of saying it's wrong, we explain to me how you got this answer. So they can cast their own big cast.
good. Excellent.
We had the student. I said depending on how old the child is. I don't know if you explain why you don't want to go into the smell or not maybe just give them a choice. It would be other friends or space that they go to.
Try to get their attention.
Distraction is good, getting a job, getting alternatives. The whole point is, you're looking at the need, not, I need this child to do this, but what do you need, which is great. Good job. Right. What's that?
Is that you suggest?
What, for the art room?
Yeah.
I would first try to identify what the feeling is, like why aren't they going? Is it sensory? Is it overwhelmed? And once I know that, then choose which choice makes the most sense, based on that. And giving choices is always great. All right.
That's one I think, right? So we have, the child that we around. So some things that we were thinking of is, in addition. It's probably less, but, giving them some. Maybe they would prefer to sit in a chair. That's fine. It's in a chair, or maybe like. Maybe they just don't like sitting.
Right.
Or maybe sitting in a spot that's. Yeah, I want to know. We get people to decide or you can try it and things that I don't figure out.
Excellent. Do we get everybody now? Good. So, I mean, I could spend 2 or 3 hours with you. We could talk about circumstances and triggers and tools. You can't do everything. You're probably barely getting everything done in the day as it is, right? Just with classroom teaching. But you can do one thing. So my hope today is that you can pick out 1 or 2 tools that maybe you weren't using before that you use, or maybe you were using them and you'll use them more and more intentionally. I want to end with a story. 2 stories. Young man named Chris, 18 years ago. He was a student at Lancaster County. When I was given my caseload, he was the one that was handed off to me like, yeah, here's Chris. He was tall for his age, about my height, in 5th grade. And he was very physically aggressive. He was the 5th grader that would toss chairs and disrupt the lesson. And we decided at the meeting he needed 3 times a week of intervention with me. So the more behaviors or challenges, the more time they got with me. I was an itinerant pull-out teacher. So scheduled to have 3 times a week, 45 minutes each with me. And honestly, I was a little apprehensive. He was as tall as me. I didn't worry about him hurting me, but I wasn't sure how we'd get through to him because he had a very walled off emotional wall. So he came in and I was like, oh, let's play Uno. And I started with Uno. It's a great game to teach emotional regulation because the bluesing, the colors. Long story short, I worked with him all year. And it went from Uno to the zones of regulation, to identifying what he was feeling, to giving him coping skills, and role playing. Like you talk about, the role playing is huge because it allows a student to process what to do when they're not dysregulated. By the time his IEP came up in April, he had made significant progress. His dad sat across the table from me and said, thank you for giving me my son back. He gets in the car after school and he talks to me. What I didn't know, the next year, that father died of cancer. We don't all get to know how much the moments matter. But you know, as teachers, every moment you have in the classroom matters. Every life is impacted by you taking the time to listen and to understand, not to fix. What I shared today is very personal for me in a lot of ways that I've shared. What I haven't shared is I was that girl. I didn't have friends. I had chronic physical pain and anxiety. School was very difficult for me. I picked, I pulled hair. I was alone. I was isolated. What I didn't realize until last October was I have level 1 autism. Social interactions are very difficult for me. Being with you today is mentally exhausting. Wow, invigorating. And as an adult female with high functioning level 1 autism, I've had to really evaluate my relationships, my mental load, how I handle things, and how I interact with our 3 kids. I've spent my life trying to fix my family and all my students. And last year I discovered that I understand them because I am them. So I'm here today being vulnerable with you to say, this is not easy, but it's worthwhile because connection matters. It mattered to Chris and it mattered to me. Thank you. In your thing is a sticky note. I want you to write down one thing you learned today, one strategy or tool that you can implement. Take it back and put it on your desk. Just one thing. You can't do everything. You can do one thing. I also put feedback forms on the end of your tables. I didn't have quite enough. I want this training to matter for teachers. I want to make a difference in how you see autism. So if you have any feedback on how I could improve,